Okay, so first of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Tony Johnson, and I'm going to be doing a just quick summary of the first chapter in Larry Hurtado's book, Destroyer of the Gods. But before I do that, I just want to talk really quickly, just give an overview of the book for those of you who weren't able to read through it all the way. So basically, the summary of this author, Larry Hurtado's goal or thesis kind of the book is to highlight the distinctive features of early Christianity that made it stand out among the other religions, and specifically within the Roman world of the first 3 centuries within Christianity's life or existence. And within the book, Larry compares Christianity to Judaism and then some of the other pagan religions and ideologies. And he basically shows how Christianity was radically different from even Judaism, in which Christianity was rooted in. And some would argue, and I would argue, that Christianity is a part of Judaism. But as he points out, Christianity was very distinct within the ancient Roman world. One very noticeable difference, I would say, between Christianity and the other religions is that um, Christianity was monotheistic, much like Judaism, but it had a very intentional code of conduct, ethics, if you will, behavioral mandates, commands, and it was very focused on piety. And one of the interesting things that Hurtado points out in the book is that we as Westerners often will look back at ancient religions and just think about religion in general. And we think that people are often exclusively committed to one religion, and then they that religion demands certain ethical codes and moral behaviors, and that's just not true. And in fact, Hurtado would say that that is a result of us being so influenced by Christianity that we view religion differently as a result of Christianity, because those characteristics are actually characteristics of Christianity and Judaism that we, as Westerners, have been so influenced by the Judeo-Christian worldview that we can't even necessarily see other religions, especially ancient religions, without assuming that they had some exclusive worship to their god or gods and their strict code of conduct. And in fact, the ancient Romans and other pagan religions, they were they were allowed and even encouraged to worship other gods, and for different reasons. And there were different frameworks of understanding what the gods did. But Christianity had such a radical impact on us that we just assume that they believe like us. Now, I want to focus this particular review on the first chapter in the book, and the chapter is called Early Christians and Christianity in the Eyes of Non-Christians. And essentially what happens in this chapter is Larry looks at some of the more well-known perspectives from the Jewish world as well as the pagan world and their views on Christianity. I actually want to grab the book so I can name a few of the people that he looks at. He focuses on first. He looks at the Jewish response to Christianity, and he focuses primarily on the Apostle Paul in this section. And he looks at Paul's testimony in the New Testament, in Acts, and some of the other books. And he looks at how Paul explains his view of Christianity and why he kind of speculates on why Paul may have been so opposed to Christianity. And essentially, Hurtado says that he believes Paul would have seen Christians as giving Jesus like basically illegitimate reverence, putting him on the same level as God. And then he looks at some other pagan influences. Pliny, a man named Pliny. He looks at a man named Galen. He looks at Lucian, Celsus, and I think there might be one more. I think that's it. But he looks at these different views, and it's interesting. The pagans. One thing that this book is really good at is showing how the pagan world interacted with Christianity. Because when you read the New Testament, you often see how Jews interacted with Christians, and you see in the book of, I mean, Matthew, Luke, John, Mark, Acts, you see the opposition that Christians faced because of their Jewish brothers and sisters and cousins. Because a lot of the Christians were Jewish, and so they were coming out of I would say like traditional Jewish faith into Christianity, into faith in Jesus Christ as the Messiah, and so they're dealing with opposition because they're seen as maybe heretical or apostate. But what Hurtado does really well is he shows how these pagans also viewed Christianity as a threat. Interestingly, because a lot of these Gentiles who were coming into Christianity, who were abandoning their idols and their gods, they were coming in, and they when they became Christians, they ceased to buy idols, go to the idol shops, or go to the temples, and so the financial support of whatever pagan religion they came out of would go down as a result of them becoming Christian, and so the ancient world actually saw that as a negative, and so that was one reason why Christians were persecuted. It was like, hey, you guys are taking money away from our gods and our cities and our local worship gatherings because you're going to Christianity and you don't worship our gods anymore. And he also notes how Christians were viewed as like out of step with the culture, and the pagan response to Christianity ranged from just a disregard or condensation, um, like condescending attitudes towards Christianity, all the way to persecution. I think it was Pliny who would persecute Christians and try to make them renounce their faith. And it's interesting when you read his account, he talks about how he questioned them about what they did, and they were really harmless. He found out the Christians were harmless, but he still, despite the fact that they were not causing any real crimes or problems in the Roman culture, he persecuted them. And I just thought it was interesting. I think a few things that this chapter helped to really do for our students in the New Testament and our understanding of the New Testament is, one, it helped to show how misunderstood Christianity has always been, even from its origin. And I think this is so significant because a lot of people think that when Christians are rejected or are persecuted by society, it's because we're doing something wrong, as if we need to be more loving and we need to do this more, or we're not doing this good enough. But Jesus says in John 15, the world's going to hate you because it didn't love Jesus, so it's not going to love Christians. And I think this chapter helped to reinforce and affirm what Jesus already told us, that the world is not going to understand us and the world's not going to like us. Um, and then also, it helped to show how difficult it was for Christians. Uh, could you imagine living in a society where not only did they not like your religion, but you were seen as less than because you were that religion, whether it was pagan or Judaism, where it was harsh opposition? Christians got it from all angles, from their family members, from their coworkers, the guilds that they met work in that worship certain gods. They were rejected by them, and so it just really brought to light more of the the reasons behind the persecution that Christians might have felt and experienced. And it also showed how Christianity actually was not good financially for the Roman culture. And then finally, I just think this chapter shows it's a good apologetic for Christianity overall, because a lot of people seem to think that Christianity was invented or created to control people's minds, or perhaps rule the world like some kind of imperial designed ideology to take over the world, or try to create like this dictatorship where Christians can enforce our morals on the world. And I think this chapter really showed that Christians have from the beginning been the underdogs. And so I think it's a good apologetic to Christians. It shows both the humility and the gentleness and the willingness to suffer that Christians have, as well as the fact that the world has always been against Christians. I think that's a good apologetic for both Christians and non-Christians. And so this book was really helpful. I think overall it brings to light a lot of things that New Testament students wouldn't consider. I think the one thing I would say is that Larry could have interacted with more Jewish sources. He says that he wants to on page 15 that he wants to interact with some Jewish perspectives, but he only looks at Paul and he looks at the New Testament. But I think it would have been more enriching if he looked at and got some more quotes from different Jewish sources to help supplement the Jewish perspective on Christianity and tease out some of the nuances because Christianity is within Judaism. It came from Judaism, and as I said earlier, I would say that Christianity is still within Judaism. It's a different branch of it. So I just think that Larry could have interacted with more Jewish sources. But I think overall it was great. I think it was very informative. This book really informed and enlightened me in many ways, and it supplemented a lot of what I read in the New Testament. So I hope you guys enjoy this review, and I look forward to seeing your comments.